The sound of twisting metal echoed through the rain-soaked highway just outside Seattle, followed by a violent jolt that snapped everything into darkness. For a split second, Claire Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Tech Solutions, felt weightless, then pain surged through her shoulder as the car spun and slammed into the guardrail. Airbags exploded. Glass shattered. The world stopped. When Claire opened her eyes, sirens wailed in the distance. Her vision blurred, rain streaking down the cracked windshield like tears. She tried to move, but hesitated. "Don't. Not yet." Instinct took over. Years of boardrooms, negotiations, and survival in a ruthless corporate world had taught her one thing: observe before reacting. She let her eyes close again. Footsteps rushed closer. A door opened. "Claire! Oh God, Claire!" That voice. Even through the fog of pain, she recognized it instantly. Ethan Cole. Her executive assistant. Single father. The one man in the company who never looked at her like she was untouchable or terrifying. "Sir, step back." "No." "She's with me," Ethan snapped, his voice shaking but firm. Claire felt his presence before she felt his touch. Careful. Protective. His hand hovered near her face, trembling as if he was afraid she might disappear. "Claire, if you can hear me, please say something." She didn't. Not because she couldn't, but because something in his voice held her there. They loaded her into the ambulance. Ethan climbed in without asking permission. Inside, the lights were harsh. The medic checked her pulse. "She's unconscious, but stable," the medic said. "Possible concussion. Shoulder injury." Ethan swallowed hard. His jaw tightened. Claire felt the ambulance start moving. She felt Ethan's hand find hers, warm, calloused, familiar. "You always do this," he whispered, thinking she couldn't hear. "You push yourself until something breaks." His thumb brushed against her knuckles, slow and absent-minded. Claire's chest tightened. She had hired Ethan 3 years ago, after his wife passed away from cancer. A widower with a 5-year-old daughter and a resume full of gaps, but eyes full of honesty. Everyone else treated her like a machine. Ethan treated her like a person. At the hospital, doctors rushed her into a private room. Ethan stayed outside, pacing, running his hands through his hair. "I should have insisted on driving," he muttered. "I knew the weather was bad." Hours passed. Finally, a doctor stepped out. "She's stable. Mild concussion, dislocated shoulder. She'll be fine." Ethan exhaled for the first time all night. They moved Claire into a recovery room. Ethan sat beside her bed. The room was quiet except for the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Claire lay still, eyes closed, her breathing even. The soft hospital light caught the tear tracks still faintly visible on her cheek from the crash. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You know," he said quietly, staring at the floor, "I almost didn't take this job." Claire's heart skipped. "I thought, a CEO like you wouldn't notice someone like me. A single dad who leaves early for school pickups and panics when daycare calls." He laughed softly, but there was pain in it. "But you noticed everything. You always do." He looked at her now. "And that scares me." His voice cracked. "My daughter asked me tonight why I work so late. I told her, because some people carry the weight of the world, and they shouldn't do it alone." His fingers tightened around hers. "I didn't realize how much you mattered to me until I thought I lost you." Claire's breath caught. A tear slipped from the corner of her closed eye. Ethan froze. "Claire." She quickly controlled her breathing again. Still silent. Ethan brushed his thumb across her cheek, wiping away the tear. "I'm not supposed to say this," he whispered. "You're my boss. And I'm just me." He leaned closer, resting his forehead gently against the side of her bed. "But if you wake up, just know, you're not alone anymore." Claire lay there, heart racing, pretending to be unconscious, while the wall she'd spent a lifetime building quietly began to crack. Because the crash hadn't just stopped her car. It had exposed a truth she could no longer ignore. The first thing Claire Whitmore felt was pain, dull, heavy, pulsing through her shoulder and neck. The second thing was warmth. Her fingers were still wrapped around someone else's hand. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the soft hospital light. The steady beep of the heart monitor grounded her in reality. Then she saw him. Ethan sat beside her bed, head tilted forward, eyes closed, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. One arm rested on the mattress, his hand still holding hers as if letting go would cause her to disappear. For a moment, Claire simply watched him. This was the man who knew her coffee order, reminded her to eat, left early for school pickups without apology, and stayed late when she needed him most. The man who never flinched when board members raised their voices. The man who just confessed feelings he thought she would never hear. She swallowed. Ethan. His eyes flew open instantly. Claire. He shot upright. Hey, don't move. The doctor said. I heard you, she said softly. He froze. He searched her face. Heard what? All of it. Color drained from his face. Oh. He let go of her hand like it burned him and stood up abruptly. Claire, I didn't mean, I thought you were unconscious. I crossed a line. I'm so sorry. Ethan, she said again, firmer this time. Sit down. Reluctantly, he did. Claire took a breath, wincing slightly. I pretended, she admitted. His brows knit together. Pretended. I was conscious longer than anyone realized. I stayed quiet, because listening was easier than answering. Silence filled the room. Ethan looked down at his hands. That wasn't fair of me. You're my boss. And you're human, Claire replied. Something my world forgets far too often. She shifted slightly, her expression thoughtful. Do you know why I became a CEO? He shook his head. My father ran this company, she said. Brilliant man. Cold. When my mother died, he buried himself in work, and expected me to do the same. Emotions were weaknesses. Love was optional. Her voice softened. So I learned to lead without needing anyone. Ethan looked at her now, really looked. And then, he asked. And then I hired an assistant who left meetings early to pick up his daughter, she said with a faint smile. And somehow, the company didn't collapse. He let out a breathy laugh despite himself. You showed me that strength doesn't mean isolation. A knock interrupted them. The doctor entered, checked her vitals, gave instructions, then left them alone again. Ethan stood. I should give you space. No, Claire said quickly. Too quickly. She caught herself. Please stay. He nodded and sat back down. Minutes passed. Tell me about your daughter, Claire said. His face changed instantly. Softer. Warmer. Lily's 7, he said. She loves pancakes and hates math. She still sleeps with the hallway light on. Claire smiled. She sounds wonderful. She is, he said. Then quieter. Losing her mom almost broke me. I promised myself I'd never let anyone else get close enough to hurt her, or me. Claire met his eyes. So did I. Their shared silence felt different now. Honest. Unarmed. Later that evening, rain tapped gently against the hospital window. Claire stared at the city lights beyond the glass. Ethan, she said, what you said earlier, about me not being alone. He stiffened. I shouldn't have. I don't know what this means yet, she interrupted. And I won't pretend it's simple. But I do know this, if I had died tonight, my biggest regret wouldn't have been the company. His throat tightened. It would have been never letting myself feel this. Slowly, cautiously, Ethan reached for her hand again. This time, she held on. Outside the room, a nurse watched quietly and smiled. Inside, two people who had spent years protecting themselves finally allowed the truth to breathe. The crash had taken so much, but it had given them something neither expected. A beginning. Claire's shoulder throbbed as she settled back into the office 3 weeks later. The physical injuries were healing, but the aftermath of the crash lingered in ways she hadn't anticipated. The first morning back, the boardroom was buzzing. Investors, shareholders, and even the press were circling the company like hawks. The news of Claire's accident had leaked, though details were sparse. Rumors whispered about car crashes, emergency hospital visits, and even potential corporate instability. Claire exhaled, straightening her blazer. We can handle this, she said to herself. Her voice was firm, but her heart raced in ways it hadn't in years. Ethan arrived shortly after her, notebook in hand, calm and steady as always. His presence alone brought her a strange mix of comfort and guilt. She had never wanted feelings like this. Not in a professional setting. Not with her executive assistant. "Good morning, Ms. Whitmore," he said softly, handing her coffee. Set up the press statements. All neutral. No personal details leaked." She gave a small, appreciative nod. "Thanks, Ethan. You always have my back." He hesitated. "Always," he murmured, almost too softly for her to catch. They walked into the boardroom together. The investor's eyes sharpened as soon as Claire entered. Questions came fast. "Ms. Whitmore," an older investor said, "we heard about the crash. Are you stepping down?" Claire held her gaze, letting no hint of vulnerability show. "No. I am here." The company continues. After the meeting, the office emptied. Claire sat alone in her corner, rubbing her temples. The adrenaline of public appearances faded, leaving exhaustion and an undeniable awareness of Ethan's eyes on her. He approached cautiously. "You okay?" She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Physically, yes. Emotionally, it's complicated." "Complicated." His brow furrowed. "You saved me," she said bluntly. "You've saved me more than once. And now, I can't ignore it anymore. But we can't just act on it." Ethan stayed silent, absorbing her words. His hand hovered near hers on the desk. "I'm your assistant," she continued. "Single dad. My employee. There are boundaries, and you've respected them. But if I don't respect them," he whispered, leaning closer, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Claire's chest tightened. Ethan." The door opened suddenly. Madeline Hayes, VP of Marketing, peeked in. "Claire, we have another call with investors. And Ethan, someone's asking for you at reception." Ethan froze, eyes darting to Claire. "I'll handle it," he said, standing quickly. He shot her a look, a mix of warning and longing, before leaving. Claire exhaled, sitting back. The office suddenly felt too big, too quiet, and achingly lonely without him. By late afternoon, the quiet shattered. A tabloid photographer had been waiting outside the building, snapping photos of Claire entering with Ethan. Headlines were already forming in digital feeds. CEO spotted with assistant after hospital drama. Romance rumors? Claire's stomach twisted. The last thing she needed was gossip poisoning the company, or their delicate, unspoken connection. Ethan returned, face set in a grim expression. "I saw them," he said, voice low. "I've handled worse. But..." He shook his head. "We need to be careful." She nodded. "I know. But I can't pretend this doesn't exist. Not anymore." Ethan's fingers brushed hers briefly on the desk, small, almost accidental, but heavy with unspoken words. "Claire," he said, barely above a whisper, "I've been honest once. I can't lie about this again. I care about you. And I will, no matter what the world says." She looked into his eyes. The vulnerability there mirrored her own. But she also saw responsibility, caution, and a lifetime of prioritizing others before herself. "Ethan," she said, voice firm yet trembling, "if we do this, it won't be easy. You have a daughter. I have a company. And the world will be watching every move." "I know," he replied. "But I'm not letting you face this alone. Not now. Not ever." That night, after the office emptied, Claire stayed at her desk longer than usual. She stared at the skyline, lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere in the shadows, a single decision waited, one that could change everything. She thought back to the crash, to Ethan's words, to the warmth of his hand in hers. Sometimes, love didn't come quietly. Sometimes, it demanded courage, defiance, and honesty. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to take that risk. The next morning, Claire Whitmore arrived at the office with a coffee in hand and a knot in her stomach. Overnight, the tabloids had exploded. Every major online publication carried a headline about her and Ethan. CEO's assistant sparks rumor mill after hospital incident. Even though nothing had happened beyond mutual care, the gossip alone was enough to make the board restless. Claire sighed and made her way to the elevator. Ethan was already there, holding the door open. His face was calm, but she could see the storm behind his eyes, the same storm she felt inside. "You okay?" he asked, stepping aside to let her in. "As okay as a CEO can be when her personal life is trending on every app in the country," she replied wryly. Ethan chuckled softly, but his grip on the elevator railing tightened. "We'll get through this. Together." Claire offered a small smile but didn't reply. Together sounded nice, but the weight of scrutiny was heavier than she had imagined. By mid-morning, the board convened for an emergency meeting. Investors were calling from across the country, demanding explanations, and the PR team was on high alert. Claire stepped into the room, Ethan following quietly behind, aware of the invisible line he was not supposed to cross. "Ms. Whitmore," the chairman said, voice sharp, "these rumors, they're destabilizing the company. How do you intend to manage this situation?" Claire squared her shoulders. "With transparency and professionalism. I assure you, my personal relationships have not interfered with my leadership. The company's priorities remain unchanged." A few board members exchanged skeptical glances. Claire could sense the doubt lingering in the room, creeping into the air like a storm cloud. She ignored it. After the meeting, the office hummed with tension. Employees whispered in the hallways, checking their phones, some smirking at the headlines. Claire felt every eye as if it were a weight pressing against her chest. Ethan approached her desk. "I've scheduled interviews with a few journalists tomorrow. We control the narrative, not them." She nodded. "Good. But, Ethan, you don't have to be here for all of this. I can handle it." "I'm staying," he said firmly. "I'm not just your assistant. Not now. Not when everything you've built is under attack." Claire looked into his eyes. There was something there, beyond loyalty, beyond professionalism. Something unspoken yet undeniable. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from an anonymous source. "We know what really happened in that car crash. Careful." Claire's stomach dropped. Her hand shook slightly as she set the phone down. "Threats now?" Ethan asked, noticing her reaction. He grabbed her hand briefly, grounding her. "We'll deal with it. Together." That evening, the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the company. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Claire's office, thunder rolling across the city. She and Ethan stayed late, preparing statements and organizing interviews, but neither could ignore the tension building between them. Ethan moved closer under the guise of reviewing notes. "Claire," he said softly, "I need to ask, after everything, do you feel anything for me?" Claire's breath caught. The question had lingered in her mind for weeks, and hearing it aloud made her pulse race. She hesitated. Her eyes dropped to the papers before her, but she couldn't hide the truth. "Yes. But we can't. Not while the company is in chaos. Not while the world is watching." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand. But I can't stop feeling this. And I won't stop being here, even if it kills me to wait." The rain intensified, pattering on the windows like a drumbeat of fate. Claire looked at him, really looked. She saw the exhaustion, the devotion, the love he refused to hide. And she realized that the protective walls she had built over years were finally starting to crumble. She reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from his forehead. "Ethan, thank you. For everything." He leaned closer, so close she could feel his breath. "Claire, just say the word. I'll fight for us, no matter what." Thunder rolled across the city, echoing the chaos outside. Inside, in the dim glow of the office lights, two hearts trembled on the edge of something powerful. Love, danger, and the unknown future that awaited them. For the first time, Claire allowed herself to hope. Because hope, she realized, was more dangerous and more beautiful than fear. Claire Whitmore's world had shifted in ways she hadn't anticipated. The company was stable, on paper, but the undercurrent of whispers, threats, and scrutiny made every decision heavier. And then there was Ethan. He had become more than her assistant in these past weeks. He was her protector, her anchor, and her conscience. And the truth was undeniable. She cared about him more than she could admit aloud. The day started like any other, but unusual emails from unknown addresses had arrived overnight. Each one contained cryptic messages. You think you're safe? Think again. Not everyone survives accidents twice. Claire frowned at her laptop, a sense of unease curling in her chest. Ethan appeared at her office door, sensing her tension before she spoke. Another message, he asked, voice low and steady. She nodded. They're testing us. Trying to see if we'll crack under pressure. He closed the door behind him and came closer. Let me handle it, he said, resting a hand on her chair. I won't let them scare you. Claire swallowed, looking at him. You always say that, but I feel scared anyway. He smiled faintly. Good. That means you're human. And that's exactly why you're not alone. It was the first time she let herself lean toward him, just a fraction, but enough that she felt his presence wrap around her like a shield. Hours later, during a strategy meeting, the office phones rang non-stop. A minor scandal involving a client threatened to escalate. Claire stayed composed outwardly, but her mind raced. Ethan stayed close, whispering suggestions, reading the room, guarding her from both the press and the board's impatient eyes. Finally, after a long day, the office emptied. Claire sat in her office, staring at the city lights. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching her quietly. Claire, he said softly, stepping closer, you've carried so much alone for so long. You don't have to anymore. She looked at him, her chest tight. Ethan, it's complicated. The world will judge, the board will judge, and I. You, he interrupted gently, cupping her chin. You've already survived the impossible. You survived the crash, the threats, the gossip. Don't let fear stop you from something real. Her heart pounded. She closed her eyes as he leaned in, close enough to feel his breath, close enough to feel that everything she had tried to control was slipping away. I can't, she whispered. You can, he said firmly. And you will. You just have to let go. A little. Their lips brushed in a tentative electric touch, so brief that it could have been imagined, but it left a warmth lingering, a promise of more. Claire pulled back slightly, shaking her head, breathless. Not here, not yet. The company, the board, everything is too fragile. Ethan rested his forehead against hers. Then we wait. But I won't stop. And neither will you. The room was quiet except for their breathing and the distant hum of city life. Outside, a storm had rolled in, rain tapping against the windows in a relentless rhythm, echoing the turmoil inside. Claire realized something. The crash hadn't just revealed her vulnerability. It had revealed Ethan's devotion, his unwavering presence, and a love she hadn't allowed herself to feel. And now, facing threats, gossip, and corporate pressure, she was forced to confront a truth she could no longer deny. She was falling for him. The next morning, another email arrived. This one contained a photograph. Claire leaving the hospital with Ethan, time-stamped and marked. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. Someone was watching, and they weren't friendly. Claire's hands trembled as she showed Ethan. Looks like we've got company, he muttered, jaw tight. But they won't touch you. Not while I'm here. She looked at him, heart swelling. Ethan, I don't know what I'd do without you. You won't have to find out, he said softly. Because I'm not going anywhere. And in that moment, Claire made a silent vow, not just to the company or to herself, but to the man who had stood by her through every fear, every threat, every unspoken word. No matter what the world said, no matter how dangerous it got, she would not face it alone. Because some connections, some loves, were worth every risk. And with Ethan, she was finally ready to take that risk. The city was quiet that night, rain-slicked streets reflecting the glow of streetlights. Claire Whitmore sat at her office desk, reviewing a final investor report, but she couldn't focus. Her mind kept drifting to Ethan. He had been by her side non-stop these past weeks, through the crash, the threats, the gossip, and the unrelenting pressure of running a public company. But tonight, something felt different. The emails, the mysterious warnings, they had escalated. And she knew it. Danger was closer than ever. A sharp knock at her office door pulled her from her thoughts. "Claire," Ethan's voice came through, calm but tense. "We've got a problem. Someone's in the lobby. Security says they're refusing to identify themselves." Her stomach sank. "Here." "Yes. Now." Claire nodded and quickly followed Ethan down to the lobby, her pulse racing. The receptionist stepped aside, wide-eyed. A shadowed figure stood near the entrance, holding an envelope. Ethan approached first, hand slightly raised. "Sir, or ma'am, how can I help you?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, they dropped the envelope at Claire's feet and walked away. Security hesitated, then followed. Claire bent down, hands trembling as she opened it. Inside was a single photograph, a staged accident, her car in flames, and someone watching from the shadows. Alongside it, a typed note. "Next time, it won't be a warning." Her breath caught. Ethan's hand was on her shoulder instantly, grounding her. "Claire, look at me. You're safe. I'm here. And no one is getting to you. Not them. Not anyone." For a long moment, she felt the weight of fear, adrenaline, and exhaustion crush her. Then she realized, through all of it, Ethan had never wavered. Never faltered. He had been her shield, her anchor, and, quietly, her heart. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. "You'll never have to find out," he replied. And in that moment, words they had both held back for weeks finally found their place. Ethan leaned down and kissed her, not tentative, not cautious, but with the force of everything he felt. Claire responded, all her fear melting into trust, warmth, and longing. The kiss broke, leaving them breathless. Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Claire. No matter what happens, no matter the danger, I love you." Claire closed her eyes, letting the truth settle in her chest. "I love you too, Ethan. I've been so afraid. But not anymore. Not with you." Outside, the storm began to subside. Rain gave way to the faint glow of dawn creeping over the horizon. Inside, the office felt warm, safe, a small sanctuary amidst the chaos of the world. In the days that followed, the anonymous threats dissolved. Security measures were tightened, and the perpetrators never revealed themselves. Claire's transparency and strength with investors and the board restored confidence in Whitmore Tech Solutions. She had survived, not just the crash, but the scrutiny, the fear, and the storm. Through it all, Ethan remained by her side, unwavering. Their connection, once unspoken and forbidden, became a source of strength, trust, and love. Weeks later, as spring arrived in Seattle, Claire found herself in a rare quiet moment at her penthouse balcony, Ethan beside her, their hands intertwined. Lily, his daughter, peeked around the corner, smiling shyly as she waved at Claire. "Hi," Claire said softly. "Hi, Claire," Lily chirped, running over and hugging her. Ethan looked at her, eyes shining. "See, you're already family." Claire smiled, realizing just how far they had come. Life had thrown them a series of crashes, literal and figurative, but they had survived them all together. And in surviving, they had found something stronger than fear, stronger than danger, love. The sun rose over the city, golden and steady, like a promise. Claire exhaled, finally letting herself relax. She had built empires, survived threats, and faced impossible odds, but none of that compared to this quiet, perfect moment, a safe hand in hers, a family forming, and a love worth every risk. "Ready to face the world?" Ethan asked, playful yet tender. "I'm ready," Claire said, smiling, her heart full. "With you." And for the first time in her life, Claire Whitmore didn't have to do it alone.